All right, so we've got this review of Life After Google by George Gilder. And wow, our listeners seem really fascinated by this idea. Like, are we really on the verge of some massive tech upheaval, or is this all hype?
Yeah, Gilder definitely makes some bold claims. I mean, he's basically saying the era of big data as we know it with companies like Google calling the shots could be coming to an end.
And that's a pretty big deal, right?
Absolutely. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
just look at how much of our lives are intertwined with these tech giants.
it's kind of hard to imagine a world without them at this point. But Gilder argues it's not just about a few companies getting too big, it's about the underlying structure of the internet itself.
Right. And he really goes after this idea that we're getting all these free services in exchange for our data.
That whole free thing always felt a little suspicious to me. Like, what's the catch?
Well, Gilder's argument is that the catch is we become the product.
Okay, so he's saying we're not just users, we're the commodity being bought and sold.
Exactly. And the review points out that this isn't just some abstract idea, it has real world consequences.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen the headlines about data breaches and privacy
Where
scandals.
those aren't just isolated incidents, they're symptoms of a deeper problem.
This centralized control of data that Gilder keeps talking about.
Yeah, and he makes this really interesting comparison. He says it's like a monopoly controlling an essential resource.
So, like, if one company controlled all the oil in the world or something,
Exactly. And Gilder argues that this concentration of power in the hands of a few tech giants is actually stifling innovation.
because they have so much control over the flow of information.
Right. It's like having all the ingredients for a great meal, but only one chef is allowed to use them.
Okay, so it's not just about our personal data being at risk. It's about the potential for the entire tech ecosystem to stagnate.
Exactly. And that's where Gilder introduces his alternative blockchain technology.
Blockchain, the buzzword of the century. But in all seriousness, it seems like there's a lot of hype, but also a lot of confusion about what it actually is and what it can do.
Yeah. Gilder's definitely a believer in its potential. He sees it as the key to a more decentralized and secure future where power is distributed instead of concentrated.
And he keeps talking about this idea of cryptographic truth. It sounds pretty futuristic, but I'm not sure I fully grasp what it means.
Well, basically, it's about building trust into the system itself through math and code, rather than relying on third parties like Google to verify information.
So instead of just hoping a company will act responsibly with our data, we have a system where trust is baked into the technology itself.
That's the idea, and Gilder argues this could revolutionize everything, from how we handle financial transactions to how we verify the authenticity of products.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like he's predicting a major power shift from these tech giants to the innovators building on blockchain technology. But is this something that could really happen, or is it just a Silicon Valley pipe dream?
Oh, the review we're looking at acknowledges that there are some major challenges to overcome. It's not going to be an easy transition.
Okay, so what are some of the hurdles that Gilder and the review highlight?
One of the biggest is scalability. Can blockchain technology handle the sheer volume of data and transactions that the internet generates every day?
That's a good point. I mean, we're talking about a massive amount of information.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of interoperability right now. You have all these different blockchain networks that can't easily talk to each other.
So it's like having a bunch of people speaking different languages, but they need to work together to build something.
Precisely. And that's why the review emphasizes the need for new standards and protocols to ensure that these different systems can seamlessly exchange information.
And of course, we can't forget about the legal and regulatory landscape. I mean, blockchain is essentially creating a whole new economic paradigm.
Absolutely. We need laws and regulations that can keep up with these changes. Things like consumer protection taxation, preventing illicit activities, all of that needs to be addressed within the context of this new technology.
So we're not just talking about a new app or gadget here. We're talking about a potential transformation of the entire digital world, right?
Exactly. And it's not just theoretical. Gilder believes that blockchain is already starting to disrupt major industries.
Okay, I think we've set the stage pretty well now. We've got a good grasp of Gilder's main arguments and the potential challenges ahead. But now I want to bring it back to you, the listener. What does all this mean for you? How could this potential blockchain revolution impact your life, specifically in the areas of procurement, supply chain, and marketing? That's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, so let's dive into the nitty-gritty of how this blockchain revolution could actually play out in your world.
Yeah, let's get specific. I mean, life after Google sounds pretty abstract.
Well, Gilder spends a lot of time talking about the practical implications, and one area he sees huge potential is in procurement.
Procurement. Okay, so like how businesses buy and sell stuff.
Exactly. It might not sound as flashy as some other tech sectors, but Gilder argues that's precisely why it's ripe for disruption.
Interesting. Okay, so how does he see blockchain changing things?
Well, imagine a world where every step of the procurement process, from finding a supplier to signing a contract, happens on a secure, transparent blockchain network.
Okay. I can see how that could be beneficial. No more digging through mountains of paperwork or worrying about whether a supplier is legit.
Exactly. Blockchain brings this whole new level of transparency and trust to procurement. Gilder argues it could drastically reduce fraud, eliminate inefficiencies, save businesses a ton of money.
The review we're looking at also talks about how blockchain can combat counterfeiting. Gilder uses the example of the pharmaceutical industry, where being able to track a drug's journey from factory to pharmacy could literally be life-saving.
Absolutely. And that level of traceability can be applied to any industry where authenticity is paramount. Think about luxury goods, food products, even art. Blockchain can help ensure that you're getting what you paid for and that products are ethically sourced.
So it's not just about making things faster and cheaper, it's about bringing this whole new level of accountability to the process.
Exactly. It's like having a built-in auditor for every transaction.
And that's just procurement.
Right. But Gilder also sees blockchain revolutionizing the way contracts are handled in procurement. He talks about these things called smart contracts, which basically automate a lot of the tedious tasks involved in traditional contracting.
Okay, smart contracts. I've heard that term thrown around, but can you break it down for me?
Sure, think of it like a digital agreement that automatically enforces itself when certain conditions are met. Let's say you're buying a shipment of raw materials. A smart contract could be set up to automatically release payment to the supplier once the shipment is verified as delivered.
Okay, so no more chasing down invoices or waiting weeks for payment processing.
Exactly. It streamlines things considerably. And because these smart contracts are stored on a blockchain, they're tamper-proof and transparent, so there's less potential for disputes.
This is really starting to paint a picture of a much...
Well, he envisions a world where every product, from a coffee bean to a car part, has a unique digital identifier that allows you to track its journey through the entire supply chain.
So it's like having this detailed history for every item, from raw materials to final product.
Exactly. And Gilder argues that this level of transparency can revolutionize how we think about sustainability and ethical sourcing. Consumers can make informed choices about the products they buy, knowing exactly where they came from and how they were produced.
It's like giving consumers the superpower to see behind the curtain and make more ethical choices.
And it goes beyond just consumer goods. Imagine being able to track the origins of conflict minerals or verify that a diamond is ethically sourced. Blockchain can bring a whole new level of accountability to global trade.
This all sounds incredible, but are there practical considerations that Gilder addresses? I mean, this level of tracking seems like it would require massive changes to existing systems.
He acknowledges that it won't be a quick or easy transition. Widespread adoption of blockchain is going to require a lot of collaboration between companies, governments, and technology providers.
So it sounds like he's calling for a systemic overhaul, not just a few tweaks here and there.
He is, but he believes the potential benefits of a blockchain-driven economy are so significant that it's worth the effort.
Okay, so we've covered procurement and supply chain. Now let's move into the world of marketing. I know this is an area you're particularly interested in.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So how does Gilder see blockchain changing the way businesses connect with consumers in this age of increasing data privacy concerns?
Well, he argues that the current model of online advertising, which relies so heavily on collecting and exploiting user data, is becoming unsustainable.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling that way these days, like we're constantly being tracked and targeted online.
Right, and Gilder believes that blockchain can provide a way for consumers to take back control of their data.
Okay, so how does he propose we do that?
He talks about this idea of a decentralized data marketplace, where users can control what information they share and with whom. They could choose to share their preferences with a company in exchange for personalized recommendations or discounts, for example.
So instead of feeling like our data is being used against us, we'd have the power to choose how it's used and actually benefit from sharing it.
Exactly. It shifts the dynamic from data exploitation to data collaboration.
I like that it feels much more equitable.
And because blockchain transactions are transparent and secure, Users could trust that their data is being handled responsibly.
So Gilder's vision is about more than just making things efficient and secure. It's about creating a more equitable and transparent internet where everyone has more control over their information.
Exactly. He believes blockchain has the power to disrupt not just specific industries, but the very fabric of the digital world as we know it.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, from the nuts and bolts of how blockchain works to Gilder's vision for a decentralized future. But before we wrap things up, I think it's important to address the elephant in the room. This all sounds very optimistic, but what about the potential downsides? Are there any risks or ethical considerations that Gilder might be overlooking in his enthusiasm for blockchain? That's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been exploring this life after Google concept, and it's honestly been a wild ride. George Gilder lays out this really compelling vision of a future powered by blockchain, but I think it's important as we wrap up our deep dive to step back and look at the bigger picture. We've talked about the potential benefits, but what about the potential downsides? What are the risks or ethical considerations that maybe haven't gotten as much attention?
Yeah, that's a crucial question to ask. I mean, any technology this powerful is going to come with its own set of challenges and potential pitfalls. And even though Gilder is clearly very enthusiastic about the possibilities of blockchain, he does acknowledge that there are some important things to consider.
One thing that's been on my mind throughout this whole discussion is the issue of privacy. On the one hand, blockchain is supposed to empower individuals by giving them more control over their data. But on the other hand, it creates this permanent, immutable record of every transaction. So how do we reconcile those two things?
Yeah, that's one of the big tensions at the heart of the blockchain debate, right? Transparency is a key feature of blockchain, but it's not always a good thing, especially when it comes to personal information. Gilder does address this, though. He suggests that we need to develop new tools and governance mechanisms to ensure that privacy is protected in a blockchain-driven world.
He mentioned something called zero-knowledge proofs, which sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Can you explain what those are and how they could help?
Well, in simple terms, a zero-knowledge proof allows you to prove you have certain information without revealing the information itself. Like, imagine you could prove you're old enough to buy something online without actually giving away your birth date or address.
So it's like a digital bouncer who can verify your age without seeing your ID.
Exactly.
That's pretty clever, but even with those safeguards in place, there's still this feeling that blockchain could lead to a world where everything we do is tracked and recorded.
That's a valid concern, and I think it points to a broader question we need to grapple with as a society. What's the right balance between transparency and privacy in a digital age? There's no easy answer, and it's something we'll need to keep debating as this technology evolves.
Another thing that struck me about Gilder's vision is this strong emphasis on decentralization. He seems to believe that shifting power away from these big tech companies is inherently a good thing. But is it really that simple? Couldn't a decentralized internet also lead to new forms of power and control?
You're hitting on a really important point. Decentralization isn't some magic solution to all our problems. It creates new opportunities, but it also introduces new challenges. For example, who governs a decentralized network? How do we prevent bad actors from taking advantage of a system that's designed to be open and permissionless? These are questions we need to think about carefully.
And it's worth acknowledging that Gilder's vision isn't universally shared right. There are plenty of people who believe that big tech, for all its flaws, is still the best way to manage the complexities of the internet.
Right. They argue that decentralization could lead to chaos and fragmentation.
So it's not necessarily about life after Google, but more like life with and beyond Google.
Exactly. It's a much more nuanced and, I think, realistic perspective. Blockchain has the potential to play a transformative role, but it's not a silver bullet. We need to approach it with a critical eye carefully, considering both the benefits and the risks.
All right, so we've explored the potential downsides, but let's end on a more positive note. If Gilder is right, and we are moving toward a more decentralized future, what skills or knowledge do you think will be most valuable in that new world?
Well, obviously, technical skills in things like blockchain development, cryptography, cybersecurity, those are going to be in high demand.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I think critical thinking, problem-solving adaptability, those are going to be essential. We're entering this period of rapid technological change, and the ability to learn and adapt quickly is going to be crucial.
So it's not just about being a tech whiz. It's about being able to think creatively about how technology can be used to solve real-world problems.
Exactly. We need people who can bridge that gap between technology and human needs, people who can imagine new possibilities, and then actually build the systems to make them happen.
That's a great takeaway for our listeners. The future is being built right now, and we all have a role to play in shaping it. Whether you're a hardcore techie or just someone who's curious about where the world is headed, staying informed and engaged in these conversations is so important.
Absolutely. The future isn't set in stone. It's shaped by the choices we make today. So keep exploring, keep questioning, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Well said. And that brings our deep dive into life after Google to a close. It's been a fascinating journey, and we hope it's giving you, our listener, plenty to think about as you navigate your own digital journey. Keep those sources coming, because the future is too interesting to ignore.